It's a good story. Today I'm talking about...
And listening to...
one of my favorite unsolved mysteries. The death of Richard Green, the Sherlock Holmes scholar. Why this has not been made a movie or a book, I don't know, but this is fascinating. You can't make this stuff up.
Well, let's see.
Okay. All right, well, let me start by giving you some backstory, okay? We're going to set the whole mystery up. Richard Green was born in Bebington, England in 1953. At a young age, he became fascinated with Sherlock Holmes. He read and reread every story and collected anything Sherlock Holmes related he could get his hands on.
He's a big fan.
Yeah, the biggest fan.
Big Sherlock nerd.
Green even went on to build his very own Sherlock Holmes office, based on scattered details from the stories.
Okay.
He's a huge nerd. As time passed, Green's obsession only grew. He became the youngest member to be inducted into the Sherlock Holmes Society of London and expanded his collecting to include anything produced by Arthur Conan Doyle.
Wait, they had a... What did you call it?
It's a fan club. It's the Sherlock Holmes Society of London.
The original Comic-Con.
It's a fan club. So now he's collecting anything by the author.
Okay.
When Green graduated from Oxford, he decided to put his passion to use and set out and make the first comprehensive bibliography and complete biography of Arthur Conan Doyle.
Okay.
Green was very successful in his endeavor and eventually amassed the largest private collection of Doyle's work, estimated to be worth several million.
Wow. The work or his collection?
His collection.
Holy shit. It's quite a bit.
Okay. Now, any fan of Arthur Conan Doyle would likely know about the mystery of the missing papers.
What missing papers?
When Doyle died in 1930, he left behind a large collection of roughly 3,000 letters, manuscripts, and other personal notes. However, given how valuable these would be to his heirs, like in the millions of dollars, there were endless legal disputes as to who would get possession. In a sort of stalemate, Doyle's 5 children agreed to lock away the papers in a chateau in Switzerland.
What?
They can't work this out amongst themselves, so they're just gonna be
let's just lock it in a place somewhere far away where none of us can get to it.
Hope they don't spoil.
Yeah.
Adrian, one of the sons, was the owner of the chateau, and unsurprisingly, he cooked up a scheme to sell off the papers without his siblings knowing.
Well, not too hard to do considering he's the owner over there.
Yeah. Well, before Adrian could complete his plan, he died of a heart attack.
Okay.
The timing of his death led people to believe there was a curse on the papers. So now there's this whole legend like the cursed missing papers.
Okay, I mean, people did tend to believe that kind of thing pretty easily back then. Oh, someone died, that was a curse!
I mean, this isn't like back then. We're talking like, 1950, 1960.
Well,
like
just going back in time, people, it's like a graph, the further back in time you
the
go,
more ignorant you are, or
the
naive.
more curses, the more
curses.
Yeah, the more curses there were back in time. We know this.
The heirs continued to fight and deceive. They got pretty nasty until suddenly, the papers just disappeared.
Or did they?
For decades, fans and biographers would search for these missing papers since a full understanding of Doyle's life would be impossible without them.
And what? Okay, so these were like secret papers that he was like, don't read these till I die.
No, they're his personal papers. Like he's writing letters, he's writing
so just for selling.
Diaries. They're just like things he kept to himself. He didn't want them published.
I would not leave those to
And he
people.
passed them on to his heirs, his kids, and they're worth a fucking fortune.
I would be very curious to know what was on them. Grocery lists and stupid shit.
Pick up eggs.
To do. Walk the dog. Clean the litter box.
Get hemorrhoid checked.
His dream diary.
So Richard Green, who was trying to write the most complete biography, was determined to find the missing papers. Green spent years following leads and conducting interviews, but breaking into the Doyle children's private affairs proved difficult. After much effort, though, Green was able to cozy up to one of the children, Jean Doyle, the youngest. Apparently, the two bonded over their shared fondness of her father.
One who, yeah, he's my dad, I love him. The other one, I'm fucking obsessed with him.
One day, Miss Doyle confided in Green. She showed him some boxes being kept at a legal office, and he knew immediately that those were the missing papers.
Wait, she didn't know
Or
this?
at least a portion of them. Okay.
Did she think they were the papers?
Hold on. It's gonna be explained. Miss Doyle stated she couldn't let him investigate further because of the family's legal disputes.
Ah,
So
the old red tape.
It's closely guarded because they can't let anyone know because of this whole legal disputes.
Well,
But
she kind of blew that one.
she promised that upon her passing, she would donate them to the British Library.
What? They're gonna be in this legal dispute until they all die, and the British Library is gonna have them for free.
Yeah, so all Green has to do is wait, and as unfortunate as it sounds, he's probably very excited for Miss Doyle to pass. Well, the day finally comes in 1997, and Green is eagerly awaiting their arrival at the library.
He camps out outside the door.
I'm gonna be first in line. However, they never come.
Uh-oh.
All right,
Who's cursed now?
skip ahead. 7 years pass.
Wait, and he's still waiting at the library.
Yes, he's still outside in line. It is March of 2004.
Whoa.
In the missing
2004?
2004. And the missing papers have been discovered. They are being sold at auction for millions of dollars by 3 of Doyle's distant relatives.
Who found them?
Now, this was terrible news to Green. If those papers were sold at auction to private collectors, he would never be able to see them and finish his work. So, Green inspects the items being auctioned off, and he notices that they include the same items he saw that day at Jean Doyle's.
Which items?
They include some of the missing papers he noticed at Jean Doyle's.
Okay.
And because Green was told firsthand by Jean that those papers would be donated, he knew something was wrong.
They stole them.
Green insisted, you're correct, that the papers were stolen, and that he had proof. See, Green had obtained a copy of Jean's will, and it clearly stated that all of her father's papers be donated to the British Library.
And not these assholes.
So Green reached out to fan clubs in England, clubs in America. He reached out to formal scholars and spread the word as far as he could to gather support and stop the auction.
Did anybody care?
Oh, yes. With help from his fellow Sherlock fans, Green assembled a group that was able to bring its case before members of Parliament.
A bunch of nerds.
The movement to protect the papers had exploded and was even being covered by the press.
Wow.
It was at this time, upon receiving national attention, that Green confided in his sister, Priscilla, that someone was threatening him.
Uh-oh. The
Okay.
curse has got him.
From here on out, Green starts acting increasingly paranoid. He informs the London Times that something may happen to him. He sends his sister a note with 3 phone numbers scribbled on it with the words, "Please keep these numbers safe." On the evening of March 26, Green meets up with his friend Lawrence Keene for dinner. Over the course of the meal, Green informs Lawrence that an American is trying to bring me down.
Whoa.
After the dinner, as they left the restaurant, Green warned Lawrence that they were being followed and pointed to a car behind them.
This is like a modern day noir.
Later that night, John Gibson, another friend of Green's, called Green on the telephone. While discussing the auction, this exchange happens. John, you've got nothing to worry about. Green, no, I'm worried. John, what, you fear for your life? Green, I do.
Very straightforward. Are you paranoid? Yes, I am. And I'm not about to change that now.
Later into the night, another call comes through. This time it's Priscilla checking up on her brother, but Green doesn't answer. The next morning she calls again. Still, no answer. After a few more increasingly panicked calls without answer, Priscilla rushes over to his house. She pounds on the door. No answer. She calls the police. They break down the door, and there's Green, dead, lying on his bed with a cord wrapped around his neck.
Oh my god. It's like a fucking, it's like a whodunit. It's a,
It's
in
a
the
whodunit.
laundry room with a candlestick thing.
Clue 2.
Yeah.
Candlestick
Sherlock Holmes
harder.
nerd.
Yeah.
I have a theory, but I'm not going to bring it up till the end.
Your theory is going to get radically changed by the end of this. I guarantee you.
All right.
Okay, let's lay out the crime scene in detail. The cord around Green's neck is a shoelace.
Okay.
There's a wooden spoon near his hand.
He's cooking.
There's an almost empty bottle of gin near his body.
All right.
It's me.
I'm just describing my afternoon.
There's no sign of forced entry, and there's no suicide note.
Okay.
The method of death is called garroting. You most often see it with piano wire.
Is it like the back then autoerotic asphyxiation?
You know, that was actually tossed around in this. I'm not even joking. That was actually tossed
around. You beat
around.
your penis with a wooden spoon and you tie your neck with a shoelace.
So, because it's usually done with something very strong like piano wire, the shoelace is an important piece of evidence.
Because that's a weird thing.
It's very weird. The president of the British Academy of Forensic Science would testify that in his 30-year career, he has only seen a suicide by garroting once.
Wait, what's the definition for garroting again?
Garroting is wrapping something around your neck and then pulling to strangulate.
Okay.
This is because self-garroting is not an easy way to go, as you would expect. You need to keep applying force
until you're dead.
And most people are just going to pass out before they die.
I mean, strangling yourself is pretty hard as it is, unless you set something in place like, hanging yourself.
Right, so you're about to die, you're just going to loosen your grip and you're not going to be able to do it.
That doesn't seem likely.
But furthermore, using something as weak as a shoelace would make this extremely difficult.
Your hands would get sweaty, you'd let go, and it would break.
Yeah, it's just not a practical thing to use. The most chilling piece of evidence, though, is Green's answering machine.
Ooh.
Green had an Oxford accent and hadn't changed his answering machine recording in nearly a decade. But when John telephoned Green on the day of his death, he was greeted by an American accent saying, "Sorry, not available."
Who done it?
Crazy
They did that shit.
Now, John, hearing this, thought he was going crazy, so he dials again, this time making sure to get each number correct, as we all would do. But the same American voice greeted him.
Who is this American murderer?
This is also backed up by Priscilla, who states she heard the same recording, which is one of the reasons why she rushed.
Wait, she heard it.
She rushed over that morning.
The night when she was trying to get in touch with him.
I didn't see anything about that. I think she only heard it in the morning.
When she tried to bang down the door.
Yeah, and so that made her rush over. Something's wrong. Now, no forensic tests were performed, no dusting for fingerprints. There was not enough evidence to declare Green a murder or a suicide.
Wait, why didn't they do anything?
Just bumbling cops.
They just wanted to turn red to black, I'm telling you, them cops.
So the case was left open. Now, sadly, 2 months later, after Green's death, the auction did proceed.
Oh no.
Ooh, now
turning in his grave.
Now we're gonna get into the meat and potatoes. The investigation. The problem with killing one of the most respected Sherlock Holmes enthusiasts is that they are a part of a community that really enjoys investigating. They love mysteries.
Murder mysteries. Exactly that.
So many who knew Green took it upon themselves to comb over the details. One of them, Owen Edwards, was able to share some interesting details. Apparently, Green had a much more involved relationship with Jean Doyle, the child of Arthur Conan Doyle, than most knew. Miss Doyle seemed to be the only child that wasn't driven by greed and genuinely wanted to protect her father's legacy. So Green and Miss Doyle naturally got along very well.
As they both had one singular life interest.
Exactly, which is why she trusted Green enough to show him the papers. But she even allowed him to help her move them. So Green
Wait, so he had them in his possession at
Green
one point.
actually had his hands on the papers.
But, I mean, why didn't he take them?
Because they had a good relationship. But the significance of this is it means his testimony that the papers being auctioned were definitely in Miss Doyle's possession would prove they were stolen and make his testimony damning.
And he didn't...
Which would prove a motive. It would prove a motive for someone wanting to take him out. To prove they were stolen. Many of those close to Green are certain it was a murder. They all state that Green had never showed any signs of depression, and even made plans with a friend for the week after he died.
I don't know.
Even more interesting, remember the bottle of gin?
Yes.
Well, Green was a known connoisseur of wine, and had wine during the dinner with John the night before his death. Supposedly, Green would never have followed up wine with gin. For his friends, this was a clear sign of a stranger.
Someone who does not know.
I mean, I don't know wine, but I feel like it's something like a wine person would do. I don't want to sully this wine with gin.
No, you don't want to cleanse the palate.
This is coming from someone who's drank Dubra for 10 years of his life.
Dubra Delight.
Also, the bootlace. Well, Green supposedly only wore slip-on shoes.
So literally everything that was set up about his murder was something that was known for him not to do. All right.
I know where your theory is going. Hold it.
Okay.
Just hold it. I know where it's going. Owen Edwards also claims that using his detective skills, he actually tracked down the mystery American. And to get answers, he sat down and had dinner with him.
How did he track him down? That seems crazy. Just any guy with an American accent.
This is a Sherlock Holmes fan, okay?
Okay. All right. I won't put it past him.
According to Owen, he lives in DC and works for the Pentagon in a high-ranking position. The American is also a part of the Sherlock Holmes fan community and is said to have actually collaborated with Green on several projects.
Including his death.
The American tells a very different tale about Green. To him, it was clear Green had become far too obsessed. Arthur Conan Doyle had become his life, and the more he learned about his idol, the more distressed he became.
I mean, it kind of sounds like he was pretty obsessed from the beginning, just turned to paranoia.
Towards the end of the author's life, Doyle sort of spiraled into madness, believing he could talk to spirits and started claiming the whole world was coming to an end.
It's the curse of the papers.
When Green
causes madness.
It does. When Green found this out, it broke his heart. Green saw Doyle as someone who stood for common sense, but now he saw he was talking to ghosts. But
I mean,
that would ruin anyone's,
yeah,
idea of a... Anyways,
of a rational person.
that didn't slow Green's obsession. In 1999, Green even confessed to a magazine, quote, "It's self-perpetuating, and I don't know how to stop."
Ah, the self-fulfilling prophecy, eh?
Green supposedly even went on to resent Doyle, stating to a friend, "I've wasted my whole life on a second-rate writer."
Jesus, I mean, come on. The writing is still good. Who cares if he's paranoid or not? He's got a weird
His whole
thing.
life is devoted, though.
But it's
Devoted to
weird
this
that
guy.
he was so into the fact that he was a rational dude. I mean, he wrote Sherlock Holmes. What
Yeah,
about
but
that screams
that's a detective.
rational?
Like, if I found out Batman was like if I found out Batman was a Mormon, I'd be like, this is terrible.
I don't know. Maybe.
Batman the Mormon. That should be a spin-off.
That'd be great. He has a bunch of little bat babes.
Batman goes to try to find the silver what's believing little things buried. the silver plaques.
You'll have to explain that one.
I could do a whole thing. I could just explain to you what Mormons believe in, and it would be as crazy
Hey,
as this.
I was interested in watching that show Big Love. I still want to watch that.
All right, we're getting sidetracked.
Okay.
When Green learned of the auction, he became unhinged, spending entire nights digging for evidence, and even yelling at his friend over the phone the night he died about conspiring against him.
About his friend conspiring against him? Like,
Yeah,
accusing him?
He had like a false memory about being proof of someone saying something against him, and the friend was like, "That doesn't exist," and he was like, "You're conspiring against me."
Obsession does crazy
So,
things to the mind, I'm telling you.
The American supposedly says that he was going off the deep end.
Clearly.
Let's get somebody else involved. Because of all this, John Gibson, the friend of John Green, who he went out to dinner with the night he died, believes Green committed suicide. He believes that Green was just very unhappy with how his life had gone and that the auction was his breaking point.
I mean, he wasted his life on a lunatic.
On a loser.
Talk to ghosts, that idiot.
But the key piece of evidence to convince John was the one bit of evidence we haven't talked about yet.
Okay.
The wooden spoon.
Yeah, what up with that?
So John believes that Green used the wooden spoon to tighten the shoelace like you do with a tourniquet.
Oh, yeah, that's how you do it. They even teach that in first aid classes now.
Which we've both done.
Yeah.
Furthermore, he thinks Green wanted it to look like a murder. That's why he didn't leave a note. And all the other weird things, the answering machine, the talk about an American. Why was he trying to frame this mystery American?
I know why.
Well, supposedly, there was an American who was also close to Jean Doyle. And when Green and Miss Doyle had a falling out, Green blamed the American for it. He blamed the American for the auction as well. He was so obsessed and despised this American that when he heard that he was coming to the same Sherlock Holmes Society meeting, he refused to go.
But how did he get him to do his answering machine?
Just wait.
Okay.
Just wait. Further evidence that points to suicide is that many of Green's actions reference something that happened in a Sherlock Holmes story. There is actually one story about a murder that turns out to be a suicide used to frame someone else.
I'm liking this.
That's where I think your theory was going.
Well, mine was a little simpler, but go ahead.
Okay, so to tie up some lingering mysteries, the answering machine, as you're curious about, it was made in America. And when Green removed his message, the pre-recorded factory message played.
Did he know about this? I mean, I guess we wouldn't know, but
I
kind of sounds like he did it on purpose.
kind of does. The scribbled numbers, they just led to 2 reporters and someone at the auction house. So,
Just whoever he was trying to call that night or something?
yeah. we're kind of left with all this information. So what happened that night? Was Green able to kill himself with a shoelace and a spoon?
Or did he kill himself some other way and make it look like that?
I mean, he was creating a real-world mystery that would have made his idol proud.
That's right.
Or
life goal.
Or was Green murdered, falling victim to the curse of the missing papers?
That's what I vote for.
But like, there's just... Can you kill yourself with a fucking wooden spoon and shoelace?
Hey, people have killed themselves in some weird ways, man. Okay, here's what my theory was. My theory was this whole death was just him trying to be like, hey guys, look at this crazy mystery. I love Sherlock Holmes. And then be like, okay, I could die happy. I mean, I wouldn't put him back. He sounded crazy. I mean, he was completely obsessed with this guy.
But we are taking that off of, like, this supposed interview his friend had with him.
But still, I came up with that theory before we even heard that information. Just because it sounds like the kind of thing a guy like that would do.
But his life work was about to come to fruition. Why would you throw that down the drain?
I don't know, maybe to give it more attention?
Okay, well, here is the really sad part. It turns out that on her deathbed, Jean Doyle actually did amend her will. She donated some of the papers to the library, but she left 2/3 to the relatives who sold them at auction. And at the auction, the library bought most of the papers. So Green would have had access to what he needed to complete his biography.
Or it was his plan all along.
I mean, it sounds like...
The curse is broken.
I would agree. Well, I don't necessarily agree with your theory. I think he spiraled into insanity, and he realized his whole life was leading up to a point that would never happen.
Or it was going to be a huge letdown. Maybe he didn't want to deal with that.
Maybe that too. I don't know how much I believe the quote-unquote American, but I think he just kind of... He wanted to create something of his own.
Yeah, his fantasy was the whole, like, mystery thing. That was where he lived mentally. And if he could just make that real, I mean, that might have just done it for him.
Then again, I feel like if he had a spoon and a shoelace, you would need something to hold that in place. And there was nothing else around him. Unless I'm missing something from what I read.
Unless there was some way of making sure that once it's tightened, it can't be untightened. But you'd have to tie it. You'd have to tie it.
Everything is too perfect. He was writing his own novel.
Yeah.
With his life.
He was having one last jerk off to Sherlock Holmes.
But he could have finished it. Like, it's so sad. He really believed he'd never be able to finish his life work. But he could have.
Well, his corpse can rest easy now because it happened and the curse is broken.
Because we talked about it.
And the curse is broken. The library has the papers, curse is broken, quest completed.
All right, next week on Talkin'bout, the library dies from the curse.
The library immediately burnt down. The papers are still out there.
All right. Maybe I'll talk about more Scotland next time.
I'm liking Scotland.
But there's a bunch of YouTubers doing the best ones in Scotland, so I don't want to just rehash stuff. But very interesting. What is this guy's name? Something Green.
Green Bean.
Very interesting. Green Bean. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
He was a weirdo.
Talking about onions, talking about green beans. Next week, eggplants.
Yay.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.